Today, we're diving into the art and science of recruitment, how to strike the right balance between speed and strategy in hiring top talent. Joining me is Stevie Aylsworth, a powerhouse in the search industry. Stevie began his recruitment career building alongside his brother at Jobplex within the DHR ecosystem, where he established relationships with over 150 executive search partners globally. Now, as a key leader at TriSearch, he's expanded that network even further, creating a highly successful global referral system that connects with executive search boutiques and HR leaders worldwide. Beyond his recruitment experience, Stevie is no stranger to competition, having played D1 basketball at Lehigh University, where he was featured in John Feinstein's book, The Last Amateurs. I always love collaborating with a fellow college baller, even though I certainly didn't play at the D1 level. So Stevie brings that same strategic mindset and relentless drive to the world of hiring and talent acquisition. So in today's episode, we're going to be exploring a handful of things like how to balance speed and intentionality in hiring without compromising on quality, what metrics truly define a successful recruitment strategy, how to determine the right time to bring on a new team member, prioritizing which roles to fill first in a scaling company, the challenges of hiring for potential future hires versus your immediate needs, and then lastly, how the recruitment landscape has evolved and what that means for businesses today. So if you're looking for insights into building a hiring strategy that's both effective and future-proof, you won't want to miss this conversation. So let's get started. Stevie, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
So let's go ahead and jump right in and give the listeners what they came here for. So let's talk about competitive hiring markets. I'd say we're in one now. We're always in one. How do you maintain a balance between speed and intentionality without compromising on that quality?
Well, I think intentionality is probably the best term to use because it's really about aligning the intention of the candidate's needs and what they want for their career with the intention of what the company needs. And so many times recruiting is thought of as resume matching, which actually is important to match experience levels, but the much more important thing is to actually match the intention. So we have a tagline in our company called talent recruit with intention. If you don't have the intention right first, you many times will not make the right hire. And so I think putting intention far out in front is most important. Speed is always crucial, particularly with our clients. They do want to hire as efficient is probably a good word, efficient as possible, but make sure the intentions are aligned between candidate and company. We've seen that much more as the last 10 years of really people being very passionate about mission statements and intentions of what companies are going for. Particularly some of the younger people in the workforce now really are very focused on who they work for and why. And the why is becoming very paramount. So it's definitely a balance, but it's intention first, setting that, being very clear with what does the company need? It's okay what they need what they need. But does that fit the intention of the candidate? And is that what they want for their next step of their career? Because it is a big life choice.
Yeah. And speaking of that timing, I saw a stat the other day that said typically within 38 days, if a person's looking for a role within 38 days, they're going to be landed in a new organization. Are you seeing data along those lines?
Yeah, 60 days is the norm as far as from a kickoff to a hire standpoint, because there's a lot of variables that with interview process and meeting colleagues and managers, et cetera. So inside 60, I think is a pretty efficient hiring cycle. 38, that metric is just showing that people are moving fast to hire again, which we did not see in 23 and 24. People were kind of in mud. 21 and 22 was lightning fast because post-COVID, there was a huge reaction to mass hiring because there was some pent-up demand. So I think it's a relevant metric that is going faster, but most hires I see, you want to take about that 60-day window. And if you get inside 60, it was both efficient and you probably aligned intention as well.
Yeah, that's good. So speaking of things that we're measuring, how do you measure the success of recruitment strategy and aligning with long-term business goals for an organization?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to first know what your long-term business goals are, and then do actually like a workforce build out of what does that look like from a personnel standpoint, and being thoughtful before you go out and hire. So you don't piecemeal hires, you actually hire with an intentionality of what exactly you need for the big picture. Many times that's led with management. So you really want to have leadership first because you want to also have them involved in the hiring process of those that probably will report to them. So many times what we see when we go into a hiring project, because we at TriSearch do quite a few hiring projects where it's not only 1 or 2 hires, but it's 20 or 30 hires. We'll many times put the management in first on the key levels and then also at that same time building pipeline for the lower levels, but then that interview process is brought in with the new hires or the current management team to make sure that they're the right hires for that. So it's really about being, planned out and segment between, okay, who are the leaders that are going to drive it from a leadership standpoint, and then who are those, really, really important middle management and lower level hires that are going to actually support, and having it go like in that tandem. I think where companies make a mistake is when it's a little bit too ad hoc. They have a sales manager here and a director here, and it's, you're not aligning actually. Wow, they might be two good hires, but will they collaborate? Will they work? Do you have the endorsement from the senior team that's even coming in saying, oh, I want to work with that person? I think it's really good to think through the stages of the hiring process, both from leadership to down to the lower levels.
Yeah. So speaking of the timing, we know timing's everything in hiring. So how do you identify when is it the right moment to add a new team member to your team?
Probably before you realize you need it, which people don't realize, but it's also hard sometimes to make hiring decisions until your budget's in place and you feel comfortably financially for that extra headcount. So it really comes down to the size of the business. A $10 million company will operate much different than a $10 billion company, but really being, having some foresight and starting the process before you really need it. So a lot of our clients are pretty good. Well, they'll be like, okay, it's November. We want to have this person in the first part of Q1. We probably on December 1st to start the recruiting process. So therefore, at the end of January or into February, we'll have them, on the team. And so timing is everything, both for planning that hire, because many times people will wait. Where the mistake is made is they'll wait till, oh my God, we have to have this person. We have to have them on Monday. Well, it's still going to be a 36-day process, 30 to minimums, 30 to 60-day process for the hiring cycle. And so therefore, you're already behind the 8 ball. So it's really planning a little bit in advance where you're comfortable, where you can give that leeway for the recruitment process, whether you're doing it internally or with a firm like mine, to make sure they hit the ground running and at the right timing. And then the other thing, timing is everything, is really is a macro situation. Recruiting really responds to the macro environment. Recruiting started to slow down immediately when interest rates changed in June of 2022. So there's always a direct correlation of fluctuation with the macro environment. So as macro things begin to improve, and I believe we're starting to see them now, and I think we're going to see more of them, then the hiring really starts to steamroll. So maybe sometimes being ahead of that, because it really is not everything fluctuates with the macro environment, but hiring, at least the 20 years I've been in it, seems to quite a bit.
So when you've mentioned 30 to 60 days a couple of different times. So walk a business owner or leader through, why does it take so long? Like, what is happening in the process that's filling in the gaps between like a 30 to 60 day process? What are you recommending that is occurring through that process?
Yeah, good question. And I think this actually relates to internal team or an external, partner like ours, where you get a, robust job description developed that what the position is. And you say, okay, this is director of sales. This is the major, experience levels we need. And these are the major must-haves as far as what we need as people to have done and be able to do going forward. So really building that job profile very concisely initially, that's step one. And then doing an official kickoff. So that could be with, again, an external vendor or an internal recruitment team, and doing a specific kickoff with the stakeholders of the search. So the hiring managers, the people who are going to be making the hiring decision, and anyone else that's involved, and really getting a very concise, whether it's internal or external, kickoff. And that's really day one of the search. In that kickoff, there's a few things that are really important to highlight. You want to make sure you highlight your major must-haves, many times 3 to 5. What companies forget to do is they might have a list of 10, which are relevant, but what are the 3 to 5 you want every candidate to have? So whether your internal recruitment team or your external partner is bringing candidates that only satisfy those 3 to 5 major must-haves. And that's vital. If you stay true to that, you actually will always, first of all, you won't waste any time in the interview process. Secondly, you'll really end up hiring someone that's right on. Another thing that's good to do in that kickoff is really talk about, okay, what are the selling points of our organization? Why would someone want to work here? And what are those 3 to 5 selling points? And really being concise and accurate about those. So therefore, as your team or the external team goes to market, they're able to really, really encourage and attract. Many people don't really realize that recruiting is a sales job initially. The best candidates need to be sold to, and then they need to be qualified and brought through the process. But many times, those that are most gainfully employed and successful need to be told why to take this job. And those selling points are crucial. Third thing is targets. Where would they want to target? Is there certain target companies that have relevant training? Is there certain target industries or like industries we want to look into? And this might even be more viable for the outside vendor like ours, where they can be more proactive in the process, but it could work internally as well. And then really, where do you think these people might be? And having all those facets inside a kickoff is day one. There's about a 2-week sourcing period, back to timing of the sourcing process of developing a pipeline of candidates. Candidates can be developed before that, but you also don't want to rush it either, but you want to make sure it's high quality. So we stay on estimate, it's a 2-week period of kickoff date to our first client touch base call. And again, that could be an internal call or an external call. And then at that point, 2-week mark, you're really reporting on exactly where the search is, what candidates are in flow, and what candidates are going to be submitted and start to be interviewed. And then you call that second 2 weeks, the beginning of the submittal interview process. And then really what the back 30 days is, which is vital, is to have consistent submittals to interview to potential hire. And one thing we always say to our clients, we want to bring you 5 great candidates, 3 of which you take serious and 1 of you hire. Our job is to make it efficient too, and not have you service, or talk to 30 companies, right? And so that's important on that end as well. And so that's really the process, is that 60-day period. You really should have a good hire in place. Now, sometimes on the extreme executive level, definitely on the large corporate executive level, it can many times be a 90-day process, and because that's normal for the executive level. But below then, 60 or under is a goal.
Have you seen any shifts as far as like placing fractional work versus full-time hires?
Well, that's a great question. What happened even in the last 2 years, particularly in the executive levels, if you look at the largest executive search firms in the world, they made their numbers mostly by interim placement. So they were able to place really good executive in interim roles, which actually has its place and it's very important. And it's, from my experience, has been more common sometimes and more of a slower time, where companies don't want to fully commit. So do I really need this executive full time? Maybe I just need them 90 days. And so, it's a very, very valuable resource and necessity for that. And sometimes kind of what we call temp to perm, an interim hire that might come in as a full-time employee could be an option as well.
Yeah.
So it's just knowing, what's your appetite for a long-term position. So yeah, but it's definitely could be a valuable option to go interim before you go permanent.
Yeah, I've seen a ton with, our firm. We place fractional human resource leaders, and
Yep.
at the beginning, I was like, I'm curious to see if this is going to take flight, and it has blown my mind. But really, since I've worked in HR for 20 years, I'm like, of course, because then you don't have to have the longer recruitment per se, and you don't have to pay the executive benefits package or all of the benefits right up front if you pull them on as a contractor. So there's just a lot of different variants in it. And it seems like to me, I've seen like a shift in the field, but I was just curious if you're seeing it too, if there's more organizations who have an appetite for that.
Yeah, I think there is and also, the gorilla in the room, which is an amazing one, is the private equity world, right? That is growing so substantially and within the last 10 years. And we become so hyper focused in assisting portfolio companies of these private equity firms because they need to move fast, they need to be efficient. And many times in those scenarios, a lot of those interim solutions make a lot of sense. There's different pace in certain of their portfolio companies, or it could be a share between companies that they get cost savings and allow it to be efficient, for a time being. So yeah, it's definitely necessary. And the big companies proved it. They really proved that in some of the largest engagements in the world, they did a lot of interim work, particularly when it's slower. What I do see though, and it's gonna be interesting to see in 25, is when the hiring cycle gets hot again, then more perm happens on average.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But interim is always valuable.
So you talked kind of through the process. Do you all recommend to organizations any behavioral or cognitive assessments through that process?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So behavioral type interviewing, we actually implement as part of our recruitment strategy, and our recruiting team does. And I know some companies also do it internally as well. So we really encourage that to be part of the process. And then assessments are really by case by position. And sometimes they can be highly, highly effective. And sometimes they are not as effective. It just really depends on the company and the profile. But we can, we really implement those quite a bit. And how we operate them many times is within the company universe of what they use, and then we implement it into our process, and they will use it to benchmark, all the candidates across the organization. So yeah, we probably see about half the time assessments you use, half the time not, but always behavioral style interviewing and questions and processes is always there.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. So what advice would you give to a company that's struggling to prioritize like which role to fill first while they're scaling?
Revenue is so, it just, again, depends on the size, but is always very important. So many times looking at, particularly if you're going to go external, looking at what positions are going to, increase your top line. And if you're going into growth mode, what are those positions? Can you really headhunt some incredible individuals that could bring not only a lot of contacts, but a lot of bandwidth to your sales team and your marketing team, and really build that top line. I think that's sometimes the first thing to look at. What I see is companies are more eager to go external for recruitment when it's a revenue producing situation. So kind of like a SaaS go to market or anything like that. It really has a hand in hand. Okay, I'm going to pay for this person to really add to our team, but also uptick, our overall performance and revenue. So that's one thing to think about. But actually, back to the human resource element, sometimes it's not thought of enough. It's so important to have a strong human resource professional, whether interim or full time, in your organization, and be able to build that benchmark. So we see that a lot too. And then I think the last, another one is on the marketing side. Real true demand marketer that comes in, and that's key as well. So sometimes looking at those kind of key positions where it's going to make the most immediate impact. And then back to human resource, many times we just dealt with an amazing small growing client that they really wanted to place the human resources person first, because then they wanted to facilitate the whole hiring strategy of the organization. And so that can sometimes be really important, is get your HR tight, and then you can go through sales, marketing, finance, accounting, and hire those individuals. And again, back to not piecemealing, and having a structure in place, a long-term strategy in place will really help.
Yeah. I feel like when I'm looking at small to mid-sized businesses, the ones that don't have big aspirations, dreams, looking at funding sources and stuff like that, they are placing HR last. And then when I'm working with PE-backed firms or that are M&A heavy, I see them bring on that people perspective first. And it literally is an indicator to their growth, in my opinion. Now, this has been my field for 20 years, so I would argue that it's strategic in nature. Most people treat it like an admin role, but I totally agree. That HR placement is clutch. And I think right now the benchmark data is 1.04 FTE on the HR side for every 100 employees that you have. So there is a weird place in between, I would say 50 to 100. When you have 50 to 100 employees, it's feel like we need an HR person.
Yeah.
And you probably do at that point. But then you'll stick with that one HR person at the beginning. They have to be kind of a jack of all trades, or maybe your PEO, or you've got HR tech or whatever that's helping support. But then you keep with that one, maybe one and a half, until you get quite a bit larger. And so that's an integral placement for sure, because they have to really be able to be a strategy and a doer out the gate.
Yep. Well, and one thing we see, a good example of that is actually in the private equity funds themselves. There are actually over 250 talent people inside private equity now. That never really existed before.
Wow.
And that's really a post-COVID. That there was some of that in 17, 18, 19, but really 21 on, there's been an intentional focus on putting really talented people inside the private equity firms themselves. And then, as you mentioned, placing HR folks inside those portcos as necessary. And so, yeah, there's a really decisive strategy of it being strategic now. And I see it firsthand how crucial it is, because you want to set up the landscape for hiring well. And yeah, so it's definitely, I would say, even the last 5 years, a pretty big shift.
Yeah. How do you manage the challenges of hiring for future potential versus immediate needs?
That's even something we deal with on our own firm. Yeah, is we're a recruitment firm, and we also are always okay, who do we need now, and who do we need for future growth? I think it's always a balance of revenue again, where, okay, what's my immediate impact that we can hire to increase our growth strategy or our revenue level. But then also keep in mind, okay, there might be a long tail on a very strategic hire, maybe a 6-month or 18-month tail, getting them in now, but then we're going to see the benefits 18 months from now. So I think it's just balancing, always keeping a little bit more of a focus on the short term, only for the fact of just immediate growth, but always not losing the long term. I think what people make the most mistake is they're very short term focused, and they only hire for that, and then they're really never thinking about long term. So almost like a 70-30 balance of, okay, deal with the short term, but always have that 30% of long-term goals and long-term focus out there, and making those strategic hires that will have a 12 to 24 month lead time. And so I think sometimes balancing that, maybe it's 60-40, 70-30, depending on the size of the business. I think the smaller you are, the more heavy it is to the short term. But the larger you get, the more you can afford, maybe a 50-50 split between short term and long term. So that's really just having a conscious awareness, all right, okay, what are we doing now? But what are we also doing and planning for a longer window? Because many times those longer windows actually even have a greater success.
Yeah. And when I asked you earlier about metrics or things that we should be measuring, I laugh asking that question because most of the, like, let's say mid-market size businesses, to ask about like recruitment metrics is almost laughable because a lot of times they're not measuring much
Yeah.
in their organization other than like hopefully paying attention to their P&L,
Yeah.
and maybe their OpEx and some things like that. But really being able to say like the strategic objectives for the organization and how they trickle down, this aspect has got to be some of it. But so many times I just don't see a whole lot of systematic measurement that's being
Yeah.
tracked, held accountable, and reported on, and then explain to employees why this is being reported on to help drive the purpose behind those positions. So I think it's important, even though a lot of people are like scared about metrics for some reason.
Yeah. Metrics do matter. That's for sure.
Yes. So you've mentioned like pre-COVID, post-COVID, since then, how has the recruitment landscape changed since you started in this field? Kind of walk us through like what the big picture has looked like. And then recently with TriSearch, like how is your firm adapting to changes?
Yeah. So I came into this field in '02. So, what, 22 years I just passed of being in this field. And the funny story I can tell you is even in '02, they talked about spider technology that would go out and source and data mine, which is actually the technology we have now with AI. So it's interesting to really, it was about 20 years that it was actually talked about that actually was a real thing. But I think one thing looking at where I started and where I am now, our advancement in technology is pretty exciting and how we're utilizing it from a sourcing standpoint. So that's really a kind of a neat 20-year look. It's like, oh, wow, we talked about it then, but now it's actually being implemented now and allowing my recruiters to be 10 times more efficient and be more direct in sourcing. But where it's exactly the same is you never can take the human element out of recruitment. No matter really what technology advances we see, it's really a personal touch. We are talking about the recruitment of people and humans, and it's important to have that human connection. And so where the way we sourced back then is very similar. Sometimes the way we source now is beyond using it once the technology is used, and really being very pragmatic in aligning intentions and aligning the candidates on a personal level and learning about them to assist with our clients. And then actually really becoming friends and true close colleagues with our clients, and really building that rapport and that partnership. So the people and partnership is exactly the same. Yeah, the technology is evolved tenfold in the last 20 years. That's probably the biggest thing I can say. And just, for us, we have a really specific niche in being that middle management solution for private equity backed, even though we do it all as far as middle management goes. But really, our carved out niche has been just even more carved out even now. It's even more valuable than it even was when we started. So which is kind of nice. It's even more needed. So just watching our focus stay the same, our people, culture, and touch to stay the same, but then the technology really evolved. And especially in the last 3 or 4 years, like a rocket ship. So we're on that rocket ship, but we're embedded with really good technology to assist us. We believe it will make everyone, both internal and external, more efficient, but we will still be human beings speaking with human beings, I believe, from a recruitment standpoint.
Yeah, and I hope so. Good grief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I love automation and I am like obsessed with AI. I use it every single day in my business.
Mhm.
But I also it will get irritated if I can't like get to a person just like anybody else. And I'm in that weird, I'm 42. So I remember time without tech. I live my life entirely
Yeah.
with tech now. And so yeah, that's a really good point. I think we'll even see the pendulum continue to swing even more back toward the human side in some areas because we've gotten exhausted by the tech piece. Okay. So tell me, if I'm a small business owner or a mid-sized business owner listening to this right now, and I'm like, okay, you guys are talking about using firms or hiring internally, or so how do I know as a business owner, like I should really get help outside of this organization? What are some of my key indicators that would tell me I should work with a firm like TriSearch or whatever that's going to help me with this role? What process should I be thinking through?
Well, first thing, you should think about your net, your overall network net, and what you can utilize initially. And that's always the first place for a founder or a leader to go. There's can be some very good initial hires that come from your own network, and you want to be able to utilize that. It's really once you've grown beyond that, and you really need to go out and find people you don't know. Really target individuals that you would love to have, like oh my goodness, I would love to talk to someone with that experience. And what's great about the recruitment process is it could educate you as much as you actually can get a hire too. So you can learn incredible things about what your business needs, where it needs to go through a lot of these conversations with really skilled and amazing people. So when you think about using a firm like TriSearch, it's really about going beyond your network and really seeing what's out there. And again, taking a position that as a small business owner specifically might make you feel better, like a VP of sales. That's going to drive my sales. Okay, I can pay for that because it's going to increase revenue maybe by millions. And so therefore, that's something. So really thinking about that. If you're a little bit bigger organization, you really can look at it more strategically and be like, what, I could actually go to a really, really important data analytics position, and that can just really help my team be more efficient, and that might be a good solution. But that's really the look. And then when you think of a firm, you really want to talk about guarantees. I think one thing that's important, if I were to put myself on the client side, is okay, is this firm my partner or are they a transaction? And you really want a recruitment firm to be a partner. And so therefore, independent of their pricing as well, but really how much do they long-term guarantee the candidate? I think that's something I'm really proud of what we do. We do extremely long guarantees. It's because we want to hire someone for the long term, not from the short term. So if you're going to engage us to do your hire, we're going to get you somebody, but we're also going to stick with you and make sure that's a 5-year hire, not a 6-month hire. So that's really important. And that's probably the biggest thing to look at. And also, how proactive is a team going to be? Databases are great, but they can run stale and they run out of candidates. You really want someone to have a sourcing and a recruitment strategy that's constantly moving, constantly sourcing, constantly going to market in real time, because everyone on LinkedIn changes instantly in where they're at and what they're doing. So that's one thing we do really well. We have a constant flow of sourcing. So we never run out of candidates. There's never a source that we run out of. We always will source more. And so you want someone that's going to stay in the game with you, just like that, and also guarantee what they play. So therefore, you guys work together to get the intentions aligned, but it is the people business. And this person really becomes a long-term player. And God forbid something happens. It happens sometimes. There's personal issues or challenges. Then they'll replace it for you, and make sure you get that long-term hire. Because when you go external, you want to make sure you get a hire for it. And not only that you get a hire, but you get a long-term hire.
Yeah. No, that's good feedback. I appreciate that. Stevie, I loved having you on today. I feel like we've been on for 27 minutes and 38 seconds, and it felt like 4 minutes. It flew by. So tell me, any closing thoughts, and then also let us know where folks can find you.
Yeah, I just think, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited about the hiring cycle this year. I feel very bullish about it. I think there's going to be good opportunities for companies to recruit again, but also great opportunities for candidates. So anyone in the job market, I feel a lot of positivity in going out for your next career move this year. I feel like it's good timing for your next great opportunity. So best of luck to you on that. And I think I wanted to share that from a macro level. As far as TriSearch goes, TriSearch.com, TriSearch.com. TriSearch comes from three brothers, but we, love to help you. Inquire. My email is saylsworth, so it's SAYLSWORTH @TriSearch.com. And go ahead and email me if I can ever help anybody. I'm happy to, just any advice I can give. And yeah, we're excited for a good year 2025. So, let's hope.
That's awesome. So we will link TriSearch, then I'll also put Stevie's email in the show notes today so you can easily find them. And if you do reach out to him, make sure to tell him where you heard that you heard about him on Don't Waste the Chaos. So folks, we know that finding the right hire, knowing when to hire, how to hire, what to pay the person, what the job description looks like, all of that can feel like chaos, but that work is well worth it when you get the right team member on your team. So don't waste the chaos, embrace it. Till next time.